You know, when you picture the Roman Empire, you're picturing the absolute peak of ancient civilization, right? I mean, this was a genuine superpower. They were masters of war, law, engineering. They built a system so advanced, it basically laid the groundwork for, well, for everything that came after.
And for centuries, their armies were just unstoppable. They owned the Mediterranean. No one could touch them. But then, in 476 AD, the Western Roman Empire just, poof, it was gone. But here's the crazy part. There wasn't some huge, final, epic battle. No big enemy came and smashed down the gates for a final time. So, what gives? If it wasn't defeated in some grand war, what on earth happened? All right, let's get into it.
So, where do we start? Well, ironically, the first major crack appeared in the very thing that made Rome so powerful. Its army. The legendary Roman legions. They started to forget what they were even fighting for.
Okay, just look at this difference here. It's night and day. The early Roman army, that was made up of citizen soldiers, regular guys, farmers, who fought because they believed in Rome. They were fighting for home. Fast forward to the late empire, and that's all gone. The army is now packed with mercenaries, guys from foreign lands who couldn't care less about the idea of Rome. They fought for one reason and one reason only: cold, hard cash. Their loyalty, it wasn't to the emperor or the Senate, it was to the general who signed their paychecks. Huge difference.
So, you gotta ask, how did it get to this point? Well, ironically, it was Rome's own success that did it in. It's a total chain reaction. First, the empire gets huge, right? So soldiers are shipped off to the middle of nowhere for years at a time. While they're gone, who's running their farms back home? Nobody. So their land goes to ruin. Pretty soon, joining the army becomes a fast track to being broke. So what do Roman citizens start doing? They dodge the draft, like their lives depend on it. And with no one to fill the ranks, the government had to start hiring, you guessed it, foreign mercenaries.
And this is the key takeaway right here. Rome's army was still, without a doubt, the most powerful fighting force in the world. But it wasn't Rome's army anymore. It was basically a bunch of independent contractors with swords. It fought for the highest bidder, loyal only to itself and its general. The very thing that was supposed to be Rome's shield had turned into its biggest internal weakness.
Okay, so the army's a mess. But that was just one piece of the puzzle. The next problem was way sneakier, much quieter. This wasn't about barbarians at the gate. This was something happening inside every single Roman home. Simply put, the empire was running out of people.
Think about it. Taxes were through the roof, the military was constantly demanding more bodies, and everyone was crowding into cities. It was just too much pressure. And it wasn't just the poor. This went all the way up to the rich elites. People just stopped having kids. Getting married and raising a family went from being the norm to being a massive burden that nobody wanted.
And if you want to know just how bad this got, check this out. It got so serious that Emperor Augustus literally had to create a law to punish nobles who didn't get married and have kids. I mean, just pause and think about that for a second. The government had to step in and legally force its own leadership to have children. That is a massive red flag that your society is on the brink.
And, of course, this had a massive domino effect. Fewer people means fewer soldiers for that mercenary army. It means fewer taxpayers to pay for everything. And it means not enough workers to fix the roads or maintain the aqueducts. The whole foundation of Roman society was just silently eroding from beneath their feet.
All right, so we've got a disloyal army and a shrinking population. What else could go wrong? Well, how about the two things that hold any state together? Its money and its government. Yeah, those were failing too.
So let's talk about the money first. For ages, the main Roman coin, the denarius, was solid silver. It was reliable. You knew what it was worth. It was the bedrock of their entire economy.
But Rome had big bills to pay, a huge army, a massive government, so the state started to cheat. They began mixing cheaper metals into the coins, but told everyone, nope, still worth the same. So a coin that looked like silver was actually, well, mostly junk. They were secretly devaluing their own money.
We have a name for this. It's basically inflation, but it's hidden. The government destroys the value of its own currency, and what happens next is predictable. Prices go through the roof. Nobody trusts the money anymore, and the whole economy just grinds to a halt. It got so bad people literally went back to trading chickens for bread. When you can't trust your own money, the system is fundamentally broken.
And then you have the government itself. Rome was famous for its system of laws, but that system got bloated. It became a tangled mess of red tape, with different officials tripping over each other, and corruption was everywhere. You had local governors getting rich, and what was the central government's solution? To hire even more officials to watch the other officials. You can see how that's not going to work.
The final result was just complete paralysis. The Roman state turned into this huge, slow-moving giant that couldn't get out of its own way. It was incredibly expensive, couldn't make a quick decision to save its life, and was totally helpless when a real crisis hit. The whole thing was rotting from the inside out, long before any invaders showed up.
So when you put all of this together, it forces you to completely rethink what we mean by the fall of Rome, because it wasn't this big, dramatic explosion. It was more like a slow, quiet fade to black.
Which leads us to the really big idea here. Maybe Rome didn't collapse. Maybe it just became unnecessary. By the time that last emperor was kicked out in 476, the whole idea of Rome, the loyalty, the systems, the identity, it was already gone.
Think about it. When the Germanic chief Odoacer took power, he didn't destroy everything. That would be stupid. Instead, he just kept the whole machine running. The government workers, the laws, the tax collectors, he just took them over. It really wasn't a demolition. It was more like a change in management. The company stayed, but it got a new CEO.
So why are we still talking about this 2,000 years later? What's the point? Well, because the story of Rome isn't just history, it's a mirror, and it holds some serious warnings for us today.
I mean, on one hand, Rome's legacy is incredible. It gave us the foundation for modern law, the blueprint for our cities, and even helped spread Christianity across the world. But on the other hand, it left us with some pretty big warnings, didn't it? It shows us the dark side of authoritarianism, the trap of thinking a huge central government can solve everything, and that dangerous idea that just getting bigger and bigger means you're stable.
So, when you boil it all down, Rome didn't fail because it was weak or lazy. Just the opposite. It failed because it became a victim of its own incredible success. It built this amazing system, but that system became so huge, so rigid, that it couldn't change when the world around it did. The very things that made it great were the things that ultimately brought it down.
And that leaves us with a really powerful question, not just for countries or companies, but for all of us, right? Is your yesterday's success actually blinding you to what you need to do to win tomorrow? That's the reflection we see when we look in Rome's mirror, and it's a lesson that, honestly, we really can't afford to forget.